Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, the benefits of a qualified plan, part 2 in our series on tax advantage retirement plans with retirement expert Jodie Dailey. Welcome to the second segment, Jodie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you know, when we touched a little on this on the first segment, I need tax deductions and I need them bad. So I'm going to start looking at qualified plans to get the job done. Or I'm an older employer and I need some serious numbers. I might look at defined benefit because I can help myself out there. But when I'm looking at it, let's talk about the tax advantage. When you walk into an employer, he has zero plan. We've determined, let's say it's defined contribution. He doesn't feel comfortable with the liability of a defined benefit plan. What are you going to tell him is the issues that he needs to look at that's going to be positive for his corporation to install a 401k, as an example?
Well, any contributions the employer is going to make to a qualified retirement plan are going to be deductible. So immediately they're going to receive a tax deduction for any contributions they make.
Federal and state?
Yes.
Okay, but not FICA, FUTA,
Correct.
All right. Okay, good.
Right.
Okay. So he makes that determination and he decides, what is he, does it cost a lot to start this?
You know, it really doesn't. Well, for one thing, the expenses associated to administration are deductible also by the business, so it really goes to their bottom line as well. You know, depending on the type of plan they're setting up, administration costs can vary depending whether it's a 401k plan, whether it's a safe harbor plan, whether it's a defined benefit plan where there's additional actuarial work involved. So, you know, administration costs vary and there are different elements to those costs.
Right, so let's just say, if I'm hearing correctly, you sound like you're saying it's reasonable.
Yes, it is.
It's reasonable, okay. And then once I set it up, my setup costs are done now. I'm just doing annual maintenance. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
How is that pretty in the game? It's not that expensive?
It's, you know, expensive is relative. If it's a 10-person plan, you know, it's generally a participant cost plus some annual administration fee. Certainly larger plans, the more participants you have in plans, the more costly they are to administer. There's the expenses of the underlying mutual funds, investments in the plan, but overall, from the standpoint of the benefits of the plan, I don't think the costs are you know, a disadvantage to having the plan.
When you're talking about retirement, do you talk about things like this in your book, The Retirement the Red Zone Retirement? This is a book that Jodie's involved in, and their firm wrote this book, and it's very easy read for consumers, and you could read it probably in about 90 minutes. It'll get you in the game. You'll have a lot of questions, I promise you, but good questions, so that when you meet with a financial advisor like Jodie, you'll be able to really have a good discussion and an educated discussion. If I decide I'm doing this and I like the relative expense, it's in the game, I'm going to do this. How do I determine, if I'm doing a contribution plan as an example, am I actually matching an employee's contribution for tax purposes, for recruiting an employer or employee? Am I doing it for retaining an employee? What are some of my reasons why I would do this? All
of the above. You know, particularly in very competitive industries, retirement plans are becoming increasingly more important in recruiting and retention of employees.
It's the tipping point on actual wages?
Absolutely, because, you know, we'll have employers that say, I'm not going to get this group of employees to come work for me if I don't have a retirement plan. Or they had one where they worked before, but we don't have one and we're considering putting one in. So it is becoming increasingly important because private retirement is on the mind of everybody. We're not sure what's going to happen with Social Security. There's a lot of uncertainty there. So even young people today are really taking their retirement into their own hands. So if people are concerned about that and they're looking at the benefits from the employer part of you, what's the benefit to the employee? Well, participation in the plan is generally to the extent of an employee making their own salary deferral contributions. If the plan provides a company match, it's free money. If the employer is matching 5% of what they put in, 100% of 5%, that's 100% of 5% that they're getting on top of what they're contributing. They're doubling their money before they've even invested anything. Do you see a lot of auto-enrollment in this now? Is it automatic? You become an employee, you are automatically enrolled. More and more employers are going to auto-enrollment plans. It really does help to encourage participation. Whether or not people want to believe they need to participate, we find that more participants that are enrolled in the plan automatically tend not to opt out, even when given that opportunity at a later date. Now, do most employees, in your experience,
do they know what to put their money in? I mean, they say they buy the idea of retirement. They buy the idea of a 401k. Then they go, I have no idea what a mutual fund and an ETF is.
Absolutely.
So
they don't have a clue.
They don't have a clue.
No,
so how do you, is that your responsibility as the sponsored plan? Is that the employer's? Who's responsible for kind of getting them up to speed?
Well, typically in every retirement plan, there is a financial advisor or a registered investment advisor who is providing investment advice and education to the participants of the plan. So that comes in on top of it, just a plan administrator. You would have an advisor as well that is there to help sit with the employees, meet with the employees, discuss the investment options, and educate them on how to make those decisions.
Okay, so let's say I'm in my group and I just put my 401k in. I tell my employees, check it out, I'm going to match the first 3%. What's the match you've seen out there as far as an employer match to his employees? Oh,
we've had some plans that do 50% up to 8%, which is very generous, very generous.
50% up to 8%? Wow.
Yep, that's a very generous plan.
Time to join that organization.
You know, and then of course there are some employers that don't match at all. Again, that is a recruitment, retention. It's a benefit to employees. It goes toward morale. It gives people, it incentivizes people to perform well for the business.
Well, I'd say if I was getting 50% match to 8%, that would be huge, encouragement to look at that firm as a legitimate player in my career. Now, when I'm looking at some of this, here's another thing too. I've noticed that some of the people that are in charge of helping me understand mutual funds, ETFs, don't necessarily teach the required employer 404C compliance. Now, I went to my first one when I was a young man, and the guy just talked about the funds he sold. Pretty sure that didn't qualify for 404C compliance. So if I'm the employer, I have a compliant issue here. I mean, right? It's part of ERISA.
Yes.
So talk to me a little about, I need to really tell these people what's going on.
Yeah, a 404C basically requires that employer take certain steps and provide certain notices to the employees. It, provides prospectuses. It provides an understanding of what the investment options are in the plan. The purpose of 404C is to shield actually the fiduciaries of the plan from liability in the event a participant has a significant loss or going to turn around and sue for loss of income to their plan. It protects the employer, but it also protects the employee because it provides the employee the communication and the information that they need.
In 2008, at the end of 2008, and right around 2009, we saw more lawsuits in qualified plans than we ever saw all in from the time I've been in this business 35 years. So that tells me that those losses, a lot of the consumers said, we did not realize we had that kind of exposure.
That's right.
And they didn't really do 404C. And some actually won their lawsuits against their employers because of it. So compliance is a big deal. Full disclosure is a big deal. Actually making sure we're touching. And by the way, 4 years ago, I noticed they came up with this thing called 408B2. Do you know that? Now you got to disclose all expense loads, everything in administration. And people were freaked out that, wow, I knew I had a 80% expense ratio on my mutual fund. I knew my IRA was taking a point. Now I see I got more money coming out on my admin and the cost of my 401k participant.
Yeah, 408B2 really scared a lot of people, but certain firms, our firm has been full disclosure for many, many years. So, and it really, I think, mostly was designed so that participants really understood the costs involved in retirement plans. Everybody deserves to be paid for what they do, but a lot of participants just didn't understand the fees involved. Okay,
so if I'm okay with 408B2 full disclosure, and I'm okay with being a good employer that brings 404C compliance into the fold of my qualified plan, and I'm willing to do some matching here, again, depends upon, man, I've heard low as 3%, and you just told me 50% up to 8%. To sign me up, I'll take it. To me, it's all over the board. It's a huge recruitment and retention issue for employers now. I think benefits are now all rising to maybe equal value to the actual wages. I mean, this is becoming a big deal. So in your opinion, before we close the segment out, Jodie, in your opinion, are you doing more defined contribution or defined benefit plan today?
Oh, that's a really tough question because we are seeing an increase in defined benefit plans. We have a heavy defined contribution market, and we have a lot of employers that put in 401k defined contribution plans. But we are seeing an increase, particularly in interest in defined benefit plans.
Oh, wow. Listen, don't forget to watch our next segment on 401ks, part 3 in our series on tax advantage retirement plans. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check your tax with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of his own.